Hey guys, this is Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam, and today I want to talk about what we call in Spanish losing the birdie. There's a saying in Spanish, and the Spanish phrase is "se le fue el pájaro." He lost his birdie. It refers to those instances where we are completely lost in thought, and we have lost ourselves in the thinking process, and we're gone for all effects and purposes. So the birdie that is usually behind your eyes observing things and being alert, you've lost it. And it's like the lights are on but there's nobody home, right? And then you regain the birdie, and this is the peculiar thing about this is you're lost in thought, you're gone, you're not there, you're literally not there. It's just thinking happening. And then you come to and you go, oh, I was gone and now I'm back. You see? Now, we don't make much of these kind of things, but this gap in self is extremely telling. It's very revealing of something that we don't quite want to admit, or we haven't quite analyzed as close as we should have. And it is the notion that when we lose the birdie, when the lights are on but there's nobody home, what's lost is the selfing mechanism. And when we quote unquote come back online and we go, oh, I was gone, right? Then the birdie's back and the selfing mechanism is back online. Now, we call that I was gone and now I'm here again, right? But if you look at this a little bit closer, you'll come to realize that whatever you fundamentally are was never really gone. And what is regained is a mental process that claims to be what you fundamentally are. Do you see that? Do you see how momentous this little discovery can be? In the words of the late Nisargadatta Maharaj, the gaps are everywhere to be seen if you just care to look for them. Now, let's say that you regain the birdie, the lights are on, and now there's somebody home. Is that somebody who you really fundamentally are? And when that somebody is there, what does that mean? What does that mean about that somebody and that selfing? What it means is that selfing comes and goes as a mechanism. And what it means is that what we fundamentally are is not the self that comes and goes. Okay, so as funny as the birdie and losing the birdie and regaining the birdie analogy can be, by contrast of loss and regain, we can come to observe and experientially see that we are not the birdie that comes and goes. The selfing mechanism, which claims to be fundamentally us, disappears very often during the day. It's gone. And then it comes back. Now, we call that being distracted or losing our awareness or whatever. Awareness is never really lost. It's just the selfing that is gone. And because our awareness is weak, when the selfing is not there, we believe that the whole, everything has kind of disappeared, right? But our fundamental real self is still there, of course. It can't be gone, right? It's still there. It's very much online. There's just no one there to see it. You see? So that pops the question, if I'm not there to see what's happening when I lose the birdie, then am I really the one who comes back? Or am I that in which the birdie arises and subsides? This is very, very direct stuff, by the way. As direct as it gets, as a matter of fact. Am I the birdie, or am I that in which the birdie arises and subsides? And then after a moment of subsiding, where the bird, when you lose the birdie, when it comes back, you say, I'm back. But whatever is claiming I, whatever is claiming self in that moment, is that really you? Or is it just a mental selfing mechanism that came back online? Okay. Another way to see this is to observe the birdie, I am, and notice by contrast that the birdie of I am can only be seen in contrast to a background of I am not, or a no self background, rather. In other words, if you can feel your sense of self, if you can feel yourself to be, you can only feel yourself to be by contrast. You can only feel as a self, you can only feel the sense of self and perceive the sense of self from a background, by contrast to a background of no self. Again, this is extremely direct stuff, very, very direct. And our ability to do this can be cultivated, as a matter of fact. It would be, some people are ready to see this immediately. I was never that lucky. I am now expounding on an insight that has arisen as of late, which I've been reading about for almost a decade and unable to actually understand. So this is huge. But even if we would intellectually understand, in the experiential understanding of seeing our sense of self against a background of no self from which it pops out or exists, is a whole different thing. And once you see this, it's extremely obvious. And it becomes extremely obvious as well that our sense of self is kind of tyrannical and also very random, because it is, as a mechanism, non-selective of what it attaches to. In other words, when the sense of self arises in the form of greed, you feel, I am a greedy person. I want things. And then when the sense of self arises in the form of charity, you feel, I am charitable. I would be willing to give all my things away for the well-being of mankind or whatever. These are vastly opposing selves. Their tenets are different, their philosophies of life are different, or whatever. If they ever come in contact with one another, you get massive cognitive dissonance. That doesn't happen very often. When it does, we go into a kind of freeze response, because we don't know which one to follow. But every sense of self that arises claims to be the complete authority, the only game in town while it is there. It hijacks our identity completely, as a matter of fact. And it does so through compelling emotional threats, if you could call them that. That's what gives it its power. We are compelled to believe that we are that. There doesn't seem to be much of a choice. The choice comes when we can see that self arose out of a background of no self and subsides into that same background. And then another self arises that thinks the opposite, or thinks something completely different, non-related to being charitable or greedy. You see? And we identify with each of those, so it is the identification that must be severed. And that identification is severed by dampening or tackling the emotional valence or bite that these selves carry with them. And there's only so far that we can go with that. But the attachment mechanism is truly undermined by understanding that we are the no-self background from which we selves arise and can be observed, arising and passing away. Once we establish that background in a more solid kind of way, we no longer feel that the self that arose is the only one that we are, or the most relevant, or that unless we comply to the demands of that self, all hell would break loose, and if that self is annihilated, we will be annihilated. There's something more fundamental buttressing the entire thing. So these selves can let go when they know that, when they can feel that they are not the only game in town. That the bigger game in town is the background of non-self from which they arise and pass away. Unless that background is felt, the selves cannot let go. They must cling to their wishes and mores. Because it really feels like unless we comply to those, something really, really bad is going to happen and we'll be annihilated. You see? So selves can't let go. And we can't let go as a self. We can only let go as recognizing ourselves as the background of no self from which selves arise and pass away. Losing the birdie and regaining the birdie, in other words, you were gone, and then you come back to, yeah, those instances ought to be observed very, very carefully. Liberation resides in the recognitions of what those gaps signify. If your sense of self comes and goes, if you can lose yourself and then regain yourself, that means that what you fundamentally are is that in which selves come and go. Yeah? And when this is experientially realized, then selves acquire a far less important and dictatorial quality, and all kinds of openings can start to happen because the selves that we're clinging on to, safeties and needs and things of this kind, feel a background that will catch them if they let go. Without that background that will catch the ego won't let go. It can't, and it shouldn't. Why should it? If annihilation is around the corner, why would you let go? If something really bad is going to happen, why would you let go? But if you feel that no self is always in the background and that these things as self simply arose out of unprocessed fears and subside, and then a different one arises, this can be seen clearly, then we can become the no-self background that allows selves to rise and pass away. It would be similar to saying that we are the sky, the empty sky, yeah? We could call that no cloud. And then we have white clouds that, keep going by. Those are thoughts that are not so important. And then we have big stormy clouds that suddenly take over the sky. Now, big stormy clouds are ominous, they're scary, they have thunder and stuff like that. And, we better be watching what's happening here, right? Like this seems to be very relevant. It has a valence of threat that makes it relevant. And the sky would be compelled to say, I guess I better do, whatever this cloud is trying to, I am this cloud and I better follow what it says, right? And then the cloud goes away and another dark cloud comes, completely different, with different, thunder, different kind of, rain or hail or whatever. And then the sky goes once again, oh no, I'm this cloud. You see? So dark clouds have this compelling nature to them. And hence, doing the work of embodiment and shadow work and all that good stuff is excellent. However, the more fundamental work is self-inquiry, in which the sky takes it upon itself to observe systematically how clouds arise and pass away. Sense of self arises, it passes away. Oh, I was distracted. I was washing the dishes or, kind of, observing the birdies go by, right? And and now I came back to that gap is very telling. That gap is the gap that shows you that you are not the self that came back. You are that in which the self leaves and returns. Okay, so I thought I would share that. Losing the birdie. I thought it was. I think it's a funny expression in Spanish, and again, the equivalent in English is the lights were on, but there was nobody home. Well, maybe you are the home and not the somebody who's there or not, right? That's something to really consider. Just use your attention to examine what this means in practice, experientially, not just conceptually. Getting it conceptually is very cool, very important. But when the realization of this arises experientially, it can be this is essentially what liberation is liberation from the sense of self, right? From the mechanism that tends to attach into something, from that which makes the sky truly believe that it is the dark cloud, as opposed to that in which clouds come and go. So that is today's pointer, very direct pointer, very helpful. The realization of this created an enormous amount of opening in my in all my like the diaphragm starting to pop open, things started to pop open, the heart, the spine was realigning itself in real time just by inhabiting the space of the no self, from which self could be seen by contrast. It's a very, very powerful pointer, and I'm sharing it for whatever it's worth. So I'm really curious to hear what you guys make of it. And so, do share it in the comment section. And if you think that these are valuable videos, then your liking, sharing, and subscribing is always welcome. I'll be back with more videos pretty soon. Thanks and cheerio. Bye-bye.